Hello there. Welcome to Claris Engage 2020. This is From Solution to App. First up, the obligatory Who Am I slide. My name is Nicholas Orr. I'm a FileMaker developer based in Melbourne, Australia. I've been a developer since version 4 of FileMaker, and that's so long ago now I don't even remember which version number, which year that is. If you know me, you probably know me through the fact that we write and sell an app called Base Elements. We've done a few other things, but that's where I'm mostly well known from. But mostly our business is general FileMaker consulting. So what would I like you to leave this session with? I want to give you some confidence and direction. I think the idea of exploring apps is something that everyone should consider. So I hope you get something out of this. I hope you're inspired, and I hope that direction that you choose, you do with confidence. But first up, we need to define the difference between a solution and an app. A solution in this sense is something that you build once for one client with lots of things hard-coded. An app is something you write once for many people. And again, I didn't actually say this is something that you sell. You don't have to sell it. This isn't always about building a product, but it's about exploring the difference between something we do as custom developers and something that we do as app developers. And I'm obviously not defining this in the way that FileMaker would like us to define it, in that everything you build with FileMaker is an app. I'm really only using these terms as a way to distinguish between something that's a one-off and something that's shared. So let's dive straight in and get straight to the point. Is my solution an app? I can give you a really good short answer. Probably not. I can give you a better answer, possibly. And I can give you an even better answer than that. Even if it's not, you should consider it. So perhaps this app that you're building right now, or this solution that you're building right now isn't an app, but maybe it is, but maybe you're building something within that could be an app. Perhaps you're building tools to help you manage your development that could be an app. Perhaps you've got this idea lurking in the fringes of your mind that you've always wanted to put out and flesh out and build, and that's an app. There are lots of places in FileMaker that we come across as developers where apps can crop up, and that's the whole point of this. I think you should consider it. So let's double back to that first cheap answer and say probably not. Why do I say that? Custom apps. And that's the reason we build apps in FileMaker, and the reason we use FileMaker as a platform is we're building for businesses and for spaces where there isn't an off-the-shelf package. If there was, you'd just go out and get that and you'd run your business that way. Or perhaps there's a business doing something generic, like they're selling a product, but they're doing it in a unique way and they have some competitive advantage that's theirs and theirs alone. So we use FileMaker to retain and strengthen what's unique about them. That custom app stuff that we do is the competitive advantage. So the reason I say probably not back at the start is the nature of what FileMaker does is quite often is to fill the space in between packaged apps with unique, very single-use solutions. So then I guess that gets to our first question, why? So the first question is why, and why are we thinking about building an app? I really think people should be thinking about apps as opposed to one-off solutions. I think it's a great way to expand your repertoire. It's a great way to build skills, and it's a great way to grow as a developer. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want this talk to energize you and give you confidence and enthusiasm about turning some part of what you do into an app. But first of all, why might I be thinking about selling an app? And the different sorts of FileMaker developers all have different opportunities and different advantages and perhaps different disadvantages in terms of what they can do. For example, the citizen developer, they might just have an idea for an app, they have an itch they want to scratch, and they just want to build it. The external consultant, such as myself, we have generally a broad skill set and wide experience because we work with lots and lots of different clients. We have sort of fairly high levels of technical expertise and we have lots of different opportunities, but we might lack deep industry knowledge. I can build a solution for a particular industry, but I would never try and present myself as an expert within that industry. The in-house developers are actually the most interesting one, and that's why I left that to last. They have a single industry focus, they have lots of deep knowledge, and they have access to industry contacts. And from looking around, this is where a lot of very successful apps have come from. Often it's been people who didn't intend to be FileMaker developers, let alone salespeople who work in a particular industry. They just saw a need, they realized that platform like FileMaker could help them build it, and they just started. And it was only when they realized how effective they can be with the Claris platform that they took this one-time thing and they built a whole business around it. So there are lots of really successful apps that have come out of in-house consultant. That's not to say a citizen developer or an external consultant like myself doesn't have that opportunity. It's just I think that if you're an in-house developer, I think you should really think about it. And that gets us to our second question, what? So our second question is what? And we've got three whats. What am I going to achieve? What am I going to need to do to get there? And then what matters the most? First of all, I really want you to think about what you're hoping to achieve, because products have very different approaches and different advantages than consulting. What are you hoping to achieve? Perhaps you're hoping to earn more money. That's nice. We'd all like a little bit more money. Perhaps you'd like a little bit more flexibility and freedom. I think the laptop on the beach is probably a difficult goal for most of us. But flexibility and freedom, having a second income stream, would offer you some flexibility there. Perhaps you want to quit your day job and become your own boss, and that's the sort of freedom to be able to decide what you want to do that you're after. Perhaps you just want to broaden your skills. You want to look to do things other than what you're doing right now. You're doing the 9 to 5, getting your job done, writing the reports, coding up things, making sure the solution runs. And perhaps you just want to do something a little bit different. You want to learn a new technical skill or approach things in a way that you haven't done before. And also reputation, having a product and having yourself known and be out there as an expert in a particular industry or in a particular niche within your industry, that can be really great for reputation building. It'll really build the value of your existing income stream. So here's a quote for you. Every FileMaker developer should consider building an app or two. That's me just now. But I do really believe that. You should consider about the process of either creating an app for yourself or turning something you've already built as a custom solution into a broad audience app, if for no other reason than what you do when you think through that process and you do the coding work required. It will make you a better developer, even if you actually never even release anything publicly. So thinking through those things, money, flexibility, freedom, broadening your skills, building your reputation, who doesn't want one of those things? I think we'd all like a little bit of all of them. I'm not saying that you build a product and you get instantly rich and famous, but if you decide up front on what your goals are, and then you can make decisions from the start about what you build and how, and who your audience is, and how you measure your success. So what are you going to need to get there? And if you're thinking about an app, you probably think about all these types of things. You know, do I need a website? Does it need a demo version? Do I need to do trials? Do I need to have a payment engine? Do I need recurring perpetual? Do you need some sort of support channel? I need to do ongoing development. I need to get updates out there. And I think that you assume that because you're selling an app that you need to have all of these things. And I don't want to do all of those things, so I don't want to do an app. But just because you put a price on something doesn't mean that your goal is to be rich. You can also give things away. That's a choice. And free things have a much wider audience than paid things. I know all about that. But sometimes it's also worth putting a price on something to limit its audience or to signal its value. So I've skipped over a whole bunch here in terms of the coding part of what you need to do. What am I going to need to get there? Obviously, the what involves coding an app. And in terms of the actual scripts and layouts and calculation differences between a solution and an app, you obviously need to do those things. But I'll come back to that a bit later on. What am I going to need to get there? Is it all of those things? What matters the most? Well, out of all those things, one thing matters the most. Market. And I don't have to mean just size. You know, I don't mean that you're going to sell thousands and thousands of these. It's not about the size of the market. It's about what you do with that market that counts. So you have to think about, does a market for your app exist? There's no point releasing something that nobody will ever see. Perhaps there is, maybe. Perhaps you don't want anyone to be able to see it. But if you think about having an audience for your app, think about the size. How many potential customers are there in the industry that you're targeting? And that's not like that everyone within that industry will be your customer or can be a customer. Just what's the total size of this industry, of what's the total potential audience? But then within that, how many of those customers have potential themselves to actually turn into paid customers? So do they have the problem that you're addressing? Because not all of them will. And then secondly, within that, have they already not found a solution to this problem? Perhaps they're working around it. Perhaps it's just time consuming for them. And then thirdly, they need to have a willingness to spend. Is the problem worth paying money to fix? Some problems aren't worth paying money. If your solution is complicated, perhaps it's not worth it. Perhaps the problem's really simple. And then finally, the last one that matters the most, value. Do they have value? How much are they willing to pay? Not all customers will pay the same amount for the same solution to their problem. So thinking about that through size, potential, willingness to spend, and value. As an example, we did some work for a carpet store. He thought his solution was an app. He was quite excited about it. And I did some research on the carpet industry. There's about 1,000 carpet stores in Australia. I was surprised that it was that large. And instantly your thoughts go, well, size is big. If there's 500 companies, if I can get half of them, that would be 500. If they're spending $100 a month, I'm making 50 grand a month. That would be awesome. But it turns out lots of them weren't. They weren't spending $50 or $100 on Xero or QuickBooks. We worked with one of the chains that was about 25% of the market. They kept their receipts in a shoebox and handed them over to head office, and head office did their accounting for them. So their willingness to spend on problems was low. They didn't see the fact that they worked mostly on paper as a problem. They also weren't highly technically literate. So the support requirements for new software were going to be high. So the price had to go up. So then the number of people who saw the same benefits at the value price I was considering were low. There were some with a willingness to spend. There were existing products I'd be competing with. So they probably had their problem solved. People who saw that willingness to spend probably had their problem solved by existing off-the-shelf products. So I either had to be a better product than theirs, or I had to find a niche within that industry and within that app to get something that was going to be worth my time. So the thing here is to match your goals with the market, match your ideal outcomes to the market that you're targeting. So obviously money is good, the right mix of either high price and large audience, maybe low price and huge audience, maybe high price and small audience. Perhaps flexibility comes from having that second income stream that you didn't have before. It might not be enough to let you quit your day job. Perhaps it lets you work part-time or choose a job that you love and pays less versus a higher paying, more stressful job. Again, flexibility is about the sort of app that you're building and who is it for. If it requires a lot of support, does it require being on site? Does it need a 24/7 monitoring service? That won't give you flexibility. That will tie you to your phone until you can afford to pay someone else to monitor it for you. Broadening your skills is really about the process of going from solution to app. And again, I'd say we can all do that, and it's worth us all going through that process. So that doesn't matter where you end up on that size and value list, whether you even sell it at all. The idea of building an app will help us all. And if you're going for reputation, you really need to think about the audience. Who will see this? Where will it end up? Will they talk about you, or can I talk about this? Perhaps the product gets you in and lets you present as the expert at that conference that all your future customers always go to. Perhaps just the fact that the people speak up about your products gets your name out there, and it makes it easier for people to find you. So that's the what. Now let's move on to the how. So that turns to our third question, which is how. How do I get started, and how much of this do I really need to do in order to start? So I guess really that's a question about what matters the most. There's lots of things that you think you might need. Do you need a website? You need to put together some marketing materials or a sales process. You need to build your trial. You need to have a payment engine so people can pay you. They're going to ask support questions. Do you need a support site? Most of all, you think, God, I must have a finished app. I can't start without a finished app. It turns out none of that is important. What's important is find a customer that's willing to pay. That's it. That's the only step. That's the only thing that matters. So what sort of customer do I look for? First of all, one that has the problem that you've identified. Secondly, one that wants your solution to their problem. And thirdly, one that can see that you, because they're going to be investing in you early on, that you are the solution to their problem. And then also critically, one that's willing to pay the potential future price of your app. And you need to state that up front. You may need to make sure they know what you're going to charge for this app. And if it was out in the market, that they'd be willing to pay that at some point in the future. Assuming, of course, you deliver your app and you fix their problem. It doesn't mean you can or will charge them that amount from the get-go, just that they have the same value aligned with your thinking. They see your solution as having the same value that you do. Now, you can offer them something free or discounted at the start, perhaps ask for their feedback in return, but make sure they're willing to be a real customer at some point in the future. And the reason you start there is it teaches you lots of things. You'll learn about how do you identify customers, how do you find them, where are they, how do I go and get to them. That will be invaluable to you later when you want to expand your audience. Are their problems real? Do they identify the same issues that you can see from your technical vantage point? Perhaps they're not bothered by the same things you are. You also will figure out what you don't know. Perhaps they have other bigger problems that you're not aware of that you should be solving instead. And then beyond the app itself, the code itself is only part of the solution. It's everything else that comes with it, which is what you're delivering. Does it require hardware they don't have? Is it self-explanatory, or does it need a comprehensive manual, perhaps some technical documentation? Maybe it requires a full training process, and that certainly should be factored into your price. Maybe the software itself needs some sort of government certification processes or forces them to do some certification that would otherwise hold you back if they haven't done it. And that would put the timeline out of your hands. And the reason why start there? Because you use that first paying customer as your guide to everything else. You treat them like they're the first of many potential paying customers. They're first, but they're not the only ones. And the other ones will be similar, and they'll have differences too. And everything else includes the code you write. So if you thought here I was going to give you a deep technical dive into how to build custom layouts or how to script a trial or custom functions or encoding product code, I'm not going to do that because no two products are the same, and you can't learn the perfect coding example from me, but you will learn it from your customers. Being responsive to their needs will force you to figure these things out in a way that works for your specific app. So that's the how. Finally, let's talk about the where. So the fourth question is where, and the question is, where do I focus my attention? There's only one answer to that. You focus your attention on your app. Your app is the most important thing. It's what you are bringing your skill set to. You're a FileMaker developer. Concentrate on those things. Don't spend time on things where you don't have a good skill base. They can be outsourced. I have one exception to this, though. If there's one other thing that you might want to learn, I would learn about web services, APIs, JSON, if you don't already know about it. Not just because it's the new thing in FileMaker. It's because as you build your app and as you go out into the world and do other things, you'll learn that all of the other services and tools that you interact with have access that you can get via APIs that automate things that you don't want to have to do manually. And so by knowing these things, you'll find that lots of services could be built and hooked together and be made to do things that save you time and let you concentrate on the things that need your focus, which is your app. And there's tools these days that do it for you. Claris Connect is a perfect example. There's others as well. But you can also build these things as well. So as an example, in terms of focus, offloading everything else to things that do services for you. So you can run a website on Squarespace. You can run payments and accounting. You can do Stripe and PayPal for purchasing, Chargeify or ChargeBee or similar services, Xero, QuickBooks, etc. Online help desks such as Help Scout and Freshdesk, and bug tracking and things like Jira, Basecamp and Trello. So that leaves you to be able to focus your attention on your app. And I'll give you an example going back a slide here about that. You could, for example, have your website on Squarespace. They have an e-commerce engine that hooks into Stripe. So someone goes onto your website, they buy your product. It's handled, the payment's handled in Stripe. The purchasing and the receipting's done in Squarespace. That automatically sends the payment to Xero. That customer later on emails you a support request. So that appears in, say, Help Scout, which has a link to Stripe to say that they're a paying customer and has their payment status alongside the request. So you answer their question, you realize you need to make a change in your app. So you turn that request into a to-do item inside your Jira project tracker. And once you've got around later on to coding up that fix, you mark it off in Jira, which is linked to the support request, so you can go back and notify the customer that you fixed their bug. And you realize there I've described about 7 or 8 different things all hooked together and all talking together. And if in some ways, if you didn't know all these things work together, you'd kind of go, oh, that sounds like magic. It's not. And more than that, you don't even have to write code to make most of that happen. Most of those tools do that automatically. Payments in Stripe automatically go into Xero. You can hook Jira into Freshdesk. You can hook your Chargify system into your accounting package, into your support tracker. It all works, and most of these services build these things in automatically. And that lets you concentrate on your app. And that lets you make it the best app it can be. That lets you solve your customers' needs, and the rest will take care of itself. So if you've learnt anything from this, and I hope you have, this is about starting down a process which will teach you different skills. It will push you in directions where you haven't been. Money is just one potential goal. Find the goal or the goals that motivate you, as when you're motivated to do these things, you can make stuff happen. You don't have to have everything built at the start, but you need to be out there talking to customers, and finding the right customers is the start, and finding right customers is the key. And finally, focus on the skills that you have. You're a FileMaker developer. That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to me. And outsource and find expertise outside that where it exists for everything else. And the other little takeaway is you can probably do this. You shouldn't doubt yourself. You'll learn a lot. You should give it a try. You never know where it will take you. Thank you.